Hello and thank you all for watching. This is Benny Sunny Sun for a Mercury retrograde conjunction Mars happening on May 27th, 2015. On May 27th, 2015, 10:38 Greenwich Mean Time, registers a conjunction with Mercury retrograde Mars in the sign of Gemini. This conjunction is in the air sign, emphasizes the repartee between the alertness for the native, the sense of aggressiveness to the entourage. The border is sometimes tenuous, and that is precisely the challenge proposed by this conjunction. The native bears of this aspect that its fleeting passage in the sky awakens yours if astrologically nothing are opposed. The formation of this conjunction takes place a few days before the full conjunction. Um, and considering reasonable orb of 5 degrees, for the conjunction it will be effective from May 23rd to June 1st. Over the orb is very narrow. The conjunction is more significant. Mercury and Mars together in this home often show a rapid flow of speech and a bright tone used to communicate, for contact speeches and intentions are not always separated from the tone in which it is transmitted. Holders of Mars and conjunction to Mercury have many battles to fight, starting with understanding how their relatives, despite their mortal vivacity, form a good feeling. The presence of Mars alongside with Mercury, planet of reasoning and communication, is the real challenge of finding a balance between the tone and message passing in the speech. The Mercury Mars conjunction marks a will to convince others using arguments and insisting words in order to make the levers during a discussion. Mercury wants to communicate by wanting to convince at any price or assert an idea. Mercury and Mars together in a card that is wearing a fight and to try to adhere the other. The native, of course, deftly juggles words and disputes and sense of humor, not always understood at the fair value. Contests during a conversation and cause is a frequently adopted method of communication. It calls into question what is meant, and discussions are lively. Contact of its stars in the archetypal, consciously or unconsciously desired debate according to the astrological context in which these planets are located. Mental alert. Mars conjoined to Mercury offers the mind to stay alert at all times. The mind is crossed by a host of issues, often unanswered, or more accurately, with a sense of dissatisfaction. Issue a response. Broadly bright, Mercury conjunction Mars is a signal of sagacity, performing in various practical aspects of life. The inner balance is based on a constant activity of the mind, so that the mind feels more in tune with himself when intellectual inactivity continues. To maintain its balance, this conjunction this conjunction invites us to maintain the mental caught up in concerns or even to create problems for the mind, busy solving it. In conjunction to Mercury Mars, the focus is also on the mind, on the problems is given an exaggerated importance. Sometimes it can also be the detail becoming a source of tension. The appearance of conjunction of opposition or square between these two planets reflects difficulty in speaking slowly and calmly. The tone can be high and can or rely on words, but neutrality does not exist when it comes to verbalization, to verbalize a situation. The mind can marry many battles in which he believes and tries to convince others to join. Among personalities illustrating this ability to juggle with words, we find um, a, a born native with scathing conjunction of Mercury and Mars in Scorpio, Daniel Balavoine, whose home is not lack of influence. This heavenly singer has Mercury square Mars in Aquarius, um, Scorpio, an astrological sign that is shown in his face with Francois Mitterrand on March 19th, 1980. The Mercury Mars conjunction does not mince his words. Daniel Balavoine was able to speak his opinions, and with his blows of arguments. We also find this guy's lawyer Gilbert Collard Master using his trait in his opposition. Mercury Mars, his biting opposition sign here, repartees of arguments in arguments. This same dissonant aspect is ideal in the trades, which refers to convince and to confront the debates. All truths are not to say insist the appearance of Mercury Mars conjunction, square, or opposition, where an incisive words are spoken louder than another. It strikes the sensitivity of others. Mercury and Mars, of course, are a formidable frankness and say out loud what others are thinking. When dissonant conjunction, square or sesqui square, dissonant opposition, this aspect is one of the signature found in the native, suffering from communication problems since they realize sooner or later that their way of communicating not faithfully reproduce what they want to transmit. This awareness is naturally to evaluate by the general context of home, especially as the dissonance of the conjunction of Mercury and Mars can be weakened by the dominant structures, features of nature, remote Mars and Mercury. One must consider the conjunction as an ambivalent appearance because the quality of a conjunction always depends on on the compatibility between planets in conjunction and aspects it receives. Harmonically connected by a trine or a sextile of the Mercury and Mars makes less vindictiveness. Mercury and Mars conjoins generating strong stimulation of intellectual activity. The mind relates, and it is mostly little alert. The position is lively on the defensive, and attitudes resulting remain likely to complicate simple situations. According to the rest of the theme, a dissonant or ambivalent aspect of Mercury and Mars is a sign of nervous exhaustion and psychological fatigue. Letting go is a real challenge for this contact with Mercury. However, living on the defensive is not the prerogative of Mercury and Mars aspect. We find a dissonant Uranus with Mercury, releasing about whose scope is not measured in the present moment. The presence of Mars Mercury conjunction should be considered carefully when the stars are dominant, and it is also to equate with the rest of the theme. It is, it is a vehicle of smooth and harmonious levels. The rough edges of this conjunction of Mercury Mars are always still a reality, but evolve in relaxing structure. Thus, the native has time to leave on things and take a step necessary for certain reactions or comments. The difficulty of mostly Mars conjoined to Mercury occurs when the natives of backdrop is built on principles of blockages and frustrations. For example, Mercury Mars conjunction in a theme with a square to Saturn, moon dominant and dissonant with Saturn, can serve as a sounding board in the argument because there will have been frustration. The native may seek to express themselves by having loud verbal fears that one does not take account of his remarks. Of course, this can take, for example, in astrology, it's always difficult to speak because of one aspect, and isolation amounts to extract a sequence of film. You will not understand if you do not see the whole movie. Obviously, anything contains many aspects. Fundamental figures, native also contains an energy flowing in a specific and identifiable way through the masters and astrological figures. A native conjunction is always a color shade within an entire chart. In the presence of this combination, a high level of impulsiveness, a card type or Aquarius with Uranus strong, the Mercury-Mars conjunction therefore is greater. The verb is always louder, but not for the same reason. The Mercury-Uranus contact exposes us to speak vehemently in the situations where it hardly warrants. In this aspect, especially dissonance, the attitude in the defensive mode of a second nature, and it often takes time no longer to react with the velocity of Uranus. The lifestyle of the defensive can continue. However, the native will not respond like clockwork. His thoughts will be more controlled. The role of Saturn here is key in these astrological contexts where the mind needs to stop, listening to reflexes that serve. The dating of periods of letting go are identifiable through the famous transit techniques, cycles, progressions, reactivations. Sometimes almost disproportionate reactions are observed under a hard aspect. Mercury, since Mars appearance is the archetype of dispute. Mercury-Mars conjunction is expressed by challenging the remarks heard in turn who he wants to impose his own truths with a force concretely audible. Conversations can easily ignite or turn into power struggles. The sterile discussion and endless also belongs to this aspect where finally everyone wants to be pulled the blanket to him. Deny the fact that Mercury and Mars is the words that attack others. The relationship between Mercury and movements, arms and hands, directly raises the question of a risk of physical aggression. In extreme cases, Mars and Mercury sign of verbal storms, a flow of words that can offend the sensitivity of others, using hurtful words and insults. In extreme cases, though, These dissonants, their presence in a natal birth chart can reflect a situation of verbally degenerates and comes to blows. It is often a question of exhausting arguments and addressing a perennial problem whose solution does not come immediately. The conjunction of Mercury and Mars in Gemini retrograde is communication issues. The entry of Mercury in the demotion phase operates here as a repositioning in our communications, adjusting your tone to control speech rate. For the native concerned, then they need to change their tune, correcting faults. At least try to mitigate with the rest of the aspects in their home. The impending conjunction of Mercury and Mars carry interesting astrological conditions combining the dignity of Mercury retrograde in Gemini on March 1st, making the mind very sharp. Mercury dignity is eager to communicate with the largest number in order to diversify his inquiring mind. Interested in cultural enrichment, Mercury is one of the demotion dignity must learn to refocus. During Mercury's demotion phase, the job is to limit the dispersion to correct attitudes becomes unsuitable for evolution. This change can be done in several demotion Mercury cycles. For some skies, this combination provides an opportunity to move forward in a journey begun under a previous downshift phase. Mercury retrograde invites us to do some soul searching. The results bear fruit through the successive phases of demotion. As for the poems as the origin of introspection, they are not transcribed exclusively in the native aspect of Mercury. They can be divided into various aspects of this topic and more or less nuanced. The background work involved is complicated by the dissonance of Mercury square Neptune in Pisces, hardly facilitates facilitates clarity in situations. Objective declines, interpretations are incorrect or viewed from a remote corner of the real problem. During an argument, the dissonance of Mercury retrograde and Neptune proposes to allow several lines of thought, doubting the tangible nature of developed reasoning. The inner confusion sets doubts arise and multiply. The dissonant aspect can go to the feeling of loss of bearing, manual loss of bearing, and deep hesitations in the relational aspect at large. In terms of communication, one can have the impression of having lost the manual and looking back on their feet by drawing on the collective opinion. The lack of certainty of feeling disrupts reasoning. The Mercury-Neptune dissonance sows confusion in his own ideas and generates a series of doubts. The opinions of others may be required because there is a lack of judgment. But nothing says that the opinions of others are favorable to the situations of the native. The disappointment that results from this aspect often comes from the fact that one can draw a clear analysis of the situation and there are mixes of various opinions unable to fix choices on one of them. The conjunction of Mercury squared to Neptune in Pisces Mars retrograde offers an ideal context for reflection in order to rectify the path followed so far. It is customary, say the new actions initiated under Mercury retrograde exposes themselves to regret or opinions change thereafter. I am also of the opinion not to install a new situation involving the future, especially under such a joint with Mercury retrograde Mars square Neptune, with a fixture a need for dissonance. The Mars-Neptune square does not facilitate the progress of action. It evokes suspended shares, deferred or unsuccessful. The expected result is not the investment at all. In business, this hard aspect is an indicator for illegal activity, fraud, and skullduggery. The dissonance of the Sun that Neptune begins to alter alertness, decreases objectivity. We do not see some realities, or we're not ready to see. The objective of this square is to accept reality as it is and what it presents itself, not as one would like it to be. There are so behind a kind of escape from reality, or it does not like what it has built, an idea, a world that does not exist. The square offers to become aware while leaving evil face unpleasant realities because they do not comply with the representation that we have of the world. Setbacks, disappointments, pains of the ego. It is not easy to accept the situations. Dissonance with Mercury, Mars, Neptune courses emphasizes these problematics with an awkward communication, or do not address the fundamental problems. Many things need to be reviewed. It is the objective of the hard facts they propose to change things, and that does not hesitate to place in an area of discomfort. It is precisely the program proposed by the world dissonance, in short. However, before the astral, we are uneven, and some people will be immune to this dissonance of Mercury, Mars, Neptune aspect because it will not receive any particular area of their sky. On a symbolic level, Mercury, Hermes, god of commerce and thieves, is poised to become retrograde, certainly as it is the case these times of year. So far, nothing extraordinary. Mm, conjunct. Extraordinary. Mercury is mostly about the record, a dissonant conjunction, Mercury, Mars, square Neptune. Here is a fertile aspect, nonsense where Mercury becomes so clever, huckster able to hypnotize his interlocutors with his eloquence. Mercury, Saturn opposite, the dissonant combination offers to step back to avoid the difficult return in the realities. When Mercury completes its dissonance, Mercury will square up to Neptune, knows how dissolution better than any aspect because the reasoning fails to identify the essential. Misinterpretations and lines of thought collide with doubts. The veil is torn after the dissonance and reveals unpleasant but useful realities of evolution proposed by opposite Saturn in Sagittarius. The Mercury Saturn opposition pinpoints a faculty to reflect and take some distance with a situation. The opposition looks less dissonant than the square suggests. Indeed, a challenge. The comparison indicated by the appearance of opposition does not speak specifically of a confrontation between a person and others, but a person's space to his consciousness. The opposition of Saturn here helps to live better dissonance. Mars, Mercury, Neptune provided to step back. Although dubious in business, this conjunction dissonance opens up sensitive days where communication and business negotiations are likely to face awaiting doubts or disappointments. Things are only important that what we bestow upon them. Quote from John Smith. This quote could be adapted to the philosophy of astrology, where technical transit cycles, progressions, and reactivations, ultimately those moments when so much importance is given to a situation. Thank you for watching. This has been a astrological transit report, Mercury retrograde conjunction Mars on May 27th. Thank you all for watching.